Hey, welcome back. Here with Catalyst Construction at our Waldo High Performance House. And just kind of bring you up to speed, we've completed our rock wool installation on the exterior. We went with rock wool for the exterior for sound. It has great drainability and it's also fire resistant. I don't know if you can hear it, but we have construction and trees getting cut down in the background, and we're not hearing that inside.
Because of the properties of the material itself, we get sound blocking at the exterior, the fire prevention that Joe was talking about, or I guess reduction in flame spread is how they would probably parse that. We're gonna start next worrying about our water control layer. So typically when we think about our rock wool, we're thinking about our thermal control and also our acoustical control. But what we're gonna move on to before we clad this house in stucco, we wanna make sure that the rock wool can have the best chance to drain and dry. And the best way to do that is to install a rain screen. We're gonna use the Delta Dry product, which is a dimple mat. The dimple mat has channels in it that allow any water that gets behind our cladding to drain to the exterior. Joe, you've got that bug screen right next to you. I don't know if you want to talk about that for a minute.
So the first thing we're gonna do is install our bug screen. We're gonna install this at the bottom and then start laying our drainage mat on top of that, and then we'll finish it out at the top. That keeps the bugs from getting in, and it also allows for some venting.
When we talk about rain screen, we're really talking about draining water, bulk water. You know, if we had water get in around a flashing at a window or something, this allows a space. A gap is critical to the success of a rain screen. I think the research shows about 3/8 is ideal, 3/16 is probably minimum. This product is that full 3/8, and that's one of the reasons we chose it. It's also extremely durable. So this product has properties that allow us to work with it without worrying about tearing it. You know, it's very tear resistant, it doesn't really stretch. So since we're doing a stucco finish, traditionally that would just get paperback lath over a sacrificial layer of number 30 felt, 30-pound felt, or you could use a house wrap. And then you would put your paperback lath over that, staple it up, and then your stucco guys are gonna come in and start laying their scratch coat. So with this product, we have the added capability of back venting or drying behind the rain screen. So any water that would get into our system is gonna drain freely out, but you're always gonna have the potential for, suspended droplets. And what we want is that differential air pressure, the stack effect, to cause air to flow up from the bottom through the bug screen, and then through those channels in the product, up and out the top, again through the bug screen. So that gives us our most durable assembly, whereas a traditional stucco assembly has none of those features, and you really do have some real risk of what we call vapor drive.
Yeah. Vapor drive is a condition that happens with stucco, and it can happen in multiple markets around the country. It just depends on where you're at. It's typically a bigger problem in the southern states. What happens is your stucco gets wet, and as the sun beats on the house, that water wants to drive into the house and not out. So the drying is to the inside. So even if you're using a house wrap, 30-pound felt, that water molecule can make its way behind your wrap and start rotting out your OSB. We wanted to go one step above and get an actual drainage mat, and that's why we're using the Delta.
Yeah, this is a robust product. It's gonna be easy to handle and quick to install. We're gonna actually screw this Delta Dry product directly through our rock wool comfort board into our studs. So we are gonna be hanging a lot of weight on this product. It's one of the reasons that, again, we chose something that's more robust and has some structure. Because if we just stapled this through the comfort board, that's a 2-inch hinge, basically. Yeah. Because the staple is going all the way back to the sheathing before it catches. 2 inches of comfort board, that could be seen as a negative. We choose to make it a positive and use a stronger structural connection of the structural screw and washer for our connection. So we'll go ahead and first locate all of our studs, which Joe's already done. He already went around the house. Before we even put up the drywall, we took painstaking measurements inside and transferred them outside of our comfort board onto our white marks you see here. Those are all the stud locations that correspond with the framing inside of the house. So we'll start by laying out, actually we'll probably start with our bug screen at the bottom because that sets our bottom edge. We'll want to transfer our lines up to make sure that we can see him everywhere. You can see how high he went in the middle here. That's because this is a 3-foot product. We want to be able to see where the studs are when we go to start screwing. Product linear in nature. So once we establish that line, it's going to be very easy to transfer that up. You're going to be able to see the screws on the washer heads all the way up the wall, but you got to start somewhere, and you always start with good layout. So that's our first step. Bug screen across the bottom, transfer our lines up, and then let's set some screws and hang some Delta Dry.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about what it's going to take to get this product installed. Basically, we're going to start at the bottom with our bug screen. What you see Joe doing here now is simply to help keep us on stud layout, because we do have to put these screws with their washer right into the studs. Otherwise, we don't have confidence that we're going to be able to hold all that weight of the stucco. The Delta Dry installation guidelines include securing the product at a maximum of 12-inch intervals vertically, and then a maximum of 24 inches horizontally. So we have 16 on center stud framing on this wall, so we won't have any problem meeting that because we're gonna hit every stud. But with this 40-inch tall product at 12-inch centers, we, I think, want to be within that first 3 to 4 inches of the edge. So we're gonna be kind of tight. It's either gonna be 1, 2, 3, you know, top, middle, bottom, or we're gonna have to double it up and do 10-inch centers so that we can be sure that we get our maximum structural capability of the fastener. So you can see this is just a typical, what we call a plaster washer, a stucco washer. So this is a 3-inch washer that is galvanized metal, so it's not gonna rust. The stucco can be troweled right over the top of it, but it's giving the screw the purchase of a large area so that the product can't pull off of the wall. Because as you can imagine, if it was just this little screw head, that's a lot easier to pull the product off. Now, once the stucco is done, there's not anyone coming up and trying to pull on the stucco, but you do have wind forces and you do have gravity. So anytime wind blows across the surface of something, it can create a sucking force, and we don't want to pull anything away because that's where we would have cracks.
Yep.
So what I'm thinking, Joe, is why don't we do the 3 fastener approach? We'll still keep it at the 12-inch center so that we're with the Delta Dry warranty.
Yeah.
But that additional fastener from the lathe manufacturer, excuse me, the lathe installer, is going to give us the opportunity to have additional adhesion to our wall system and really reduce our risk.
And this is nice because we're kind of creating a mock-up for our stucco installer. So when he comes to the site, if he has any questions, he's going to see this rain screen installed and exactly how it should be done to spec. If he, wants to reference it, he'll have his lines so he can just shoot right up. We'll probably talk a little bit more about the bug screen with him, but really having everybody on the same page is critical to these installs.
So we're going to start at this left-hand side and work left to right, which means we have to start with some custom carpentry notching here. So let's see if I'm any good. So at 7.5, I'm 1, and then I'm 3 on the top. So that means I'm coming 3 at 1 inch above. So all I'm doing here is a rough mark out. So with the screws started in that dimple, he knows he's hitting the stud because he can see the layout.
There we go. The first one has to be at a slight angle so we can catch the stud.
And this is where the width of those plaster washers really makes a big difference, because there really is no structure behind that last 2 inches at the corner. But because we have the wide purchase of that metal washer, we're okay. But as he works across, he's going to work it with his hand to take all the bowing out of the material, this looseness. We won't have that.
I'll probably start in the middle.
Okay?
And then
so by going to the end of the wall, I can actually apply a little bit of pressure and pull it tight to help him, because what we're trying to achieve, again, is the bottom edge of this rain screen sitting right on top of that bug screen. And each successive layer, just like if you were doing masonry or drywall or any sheathing on a wall, each layer stacks up. So establishing a nice level across the very first course is pretty critical. This is what we believe is the best assembly. If you want to upgrade from that, we have options. If you want to save on budget, we have options. But the key is to understand why we do what we do, and then you can make those informed decisions. with the fibrous nature of the rock wool behind it, if I get into it a little bit, I haven't degraded the performance at all, because the rock wool comfort board is a non-linear fiber matrix of basalt and some recycled slag for environmental benefit. So having a little score in it doesn't hurt a thing. So now I can secure this line and start with our next one. And since I've got to manage my window heights, I have a little infill here. This is where I'm gonna have bug screen. So I'm gonna take my bug screen and secure it underneath, and that way it'll all plane out. So I'll have drainage and drying up to the top. This will get the J bead upside down from the way that we showed it before, so the J will be on the top, and that gives us something to terminate our stucco to. But there'll also be control joints applied, like we talked about earlier, in the metalwork. The expanded metal lath has control joints that we usually will run off of the corners of windows, because that's typically the weak point where the stucco will get compromised with cracking from structural movement. House is solidly built, but it's always gonna take wind loading that's gonna cause a little bit of racking force, and that's what causes some of those cracks. So if I let Joe do all the work, I'll get myself in trouble. I better grab a screw gun and get to it. So here in climate zone 4, where we have high humidity, we go below 0, we go above 100 degrees, we really take full advantage of that thermal benefit and the vapor open quality of the rock wool product. The current code here in Kansas City, Missouri is an R13 in the cavity with 5 continuous exterior. So we are an R8 exterior, so we're exceeding that code substantially. We also have comfort bat in our cavity, that's R23. So we're way beyond what's code required, but this is the level of performance that we aspire to deliver to our clients.
Yeah, and our clients are gonna love it. This house, it's kind of not a noisy neighborhood, but people are mowing the lawns, kids playing. Inside, you're not hearing any of it. It's just a quiet house, it's comfortable, it's clean. You know, we have a antimicrobial insulation more or less on the inside.
It doesn't promote mold growth. That's
Yeah.
a great point, Joe. The vapor open nature of it always, is what we focus on, because that allows us for drying to the interior or to the exterior. But you make a good point. There's really no way for it to support mold growth. So that is a healthier environment. That's a good point.
All right, Travis, do you think we should put up this next course of Delta Dry?
Let's get it going.
Yeah.
So the screwing pattern on this is once again going to be 12 vertically. So every 12 inches vertically we require a screw. And then horizontally we can go up to 24. This house, because we already have the thermal break established with the exterior continuous insulation, we did go ahead and do a 16 on center framing. So our studs are every 16 inches on center inside the wall. And that's what we were talking about earlier, that corner, the 2 inches of continuous exterior insulation makes it a little bit tough to catch that corner stud. But once you get it established, then you're good to go.
Yeah, and you see here, we're just gonna go ahead and line it out so it just stacks right on our first course. And that's all we need to do to follow their manufacturer installation guide.
Something nice about using the impact driver that you hear Joe running there, it's telling us whether or not we made a positive connection with that stud. If we don't hit the stud, it's just gonna spin just like a screw-in drywall, because the sheathing is only a 7/16 short or thick. You can hear that impacting action. That's occurring as the screw bites into the stud. So we have positive engagement. That allows us to not worry about that cantilever effect that we were talking about earlier if we were using a staple. We can't see the vascularity because my shirt's concealing the massive musculature and veining. So, got to keep my fans guessing. The silence of the peanut gallery is deafening. There we go. Who has some baby oil? See this wave? That's a huge hump in the stucco. We can't have that. So if we need to, we can adjust this up to make sure that we don't create a wave like that. Because even though we want the product to be butted tightly if we can, if it's not, the water is still gonna flow down, the air is still gonna flow up, the stucco is gonna be continuous, there's really no risk.
Yeah, just kind of work it down.
All right, so this is what we were talking about earlier, where the roll itself is what allows you to have leverage. So if I was pulling just the end of it, it's very difficult to get a good purchase on your hand grip. But with this, I can actually pull that entire top edge out a good ½ inch. We've worked our way across the wall with the second course, and we're now to our first real transition horizontally. We're about to run into our thermal buck, which is sticking out just proud of the comfort board so that the rain screen and stucco can all plane out and the J-bead can mount directly across the face of this. So it'll plane everything out. At the top of this next section, we have to have that bug screen again. So the bug screen allows for that ventilation. We don't need bug screen on the vertical section here where it mates, but we do need to have the Delta Dry product tightly installed to this edge. So this is another point where the linear nature of this product really helps us, because all we have to do is roll the product over to that point, find which one is our cut, which I would say this one. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah,
is that our cut?
Split it.
So a simple knife cut to mark it, and then we run right up the wall. So rather than cut across the face of the window, with that mark, I can now just run right down the line, and I don't have to risk the face of the window at all. Just like the manufacturer wants. So we'll put a row of washers right up against that to hold it tight, and that'll allow us to continue on horizontally. Instead of putting a wave in it and putting a fastener up at the top right now, we're gonna keep working across the upper part. And when we get to this point, as I was saying, with each of these, I've been installing them at a slight angle. So instead of being right on the stud with our layout, I'm picking the next dimple over and then angling it toward the stud to pull that tightly so that there's no waves in the product. And that allows us to have that nice flat wall, which you can see if you shoot down the corner, you can just see it's a nice flat surface. So it's not very often that you get to have a project that includes so many of your high performance checklist items. We usually have clients that focus more on interior finishes. They want the wool for the Viking fancy range and the big kitchen island. These folks opted for our priority, which is the durable details, the high performance stuff that's really gonna make the house feel comfortable and last a long time. So this is an 1,800 square foot house. This is not a big opulent McMansion. This is a small house that's very well detailed. Their cabinets will not be the absolute custom bee's knees, top of the line stuff. They are nice cabinets, but we're not looking at, oh, we blew the budget on the interior, let's go ahead and just, put vinyl siding on the exterior. This is quite literally, this is a few of my favorite things. You've got rock wool and rain screens and new Alpen windows. I mean, I can go on and on. Standing seam metal, you get it. The finishes on the outside are what Joe and I are really passionate about, making sure that the house is gonna be comfortable, it's gonna last for a very long time, it's gonna be very inexpensive to operate, and that's really what we're excited about when we come to the table with the architect, is the stuff that's going to be in the walls, that's gonna be under the cladding, that's gonna matter for a long time, that no one ever switches out. The stuff on the inside, you're gonna get new countertops in 15 years, but your house, the outside of it, the windows, the roof, you're not swapping that stuff out, definitely not the exterior insulation. So underneath this stucco, we have all of the best things going on and nothing to worry about for the life of this home. So as we discussed, we've got the rain screen applied over the top of the comfort board. Below the rain screen, we have, you can actually see a little bit of our comfort board peeking out there. And then we have the bug screen. Now the guys are starting to install the expanded metal lath, and that starts with the J-bead. The profile of this is such that it creates both a termination and a weep. as well as having the expanded metal for the stucco to bite to. So this is kind of the framework, if you will, for all of the stucco. We'll also have the control joints up next, which we talked about yesterday, and we'll probably talk about again. But this metal is really what allows the stucco to bond to the wall. It's going to lap over the entire surface and will get screwed on, as you can see, with these fender washers and exterior rated screws. So when they start troweling on, we don't have to worry about rust being created as part of the system.
One thing I wanted to kind of touch base on is when we're installing the Delta Dry, it's important that the seam here does not overlap. It's not part of our drainage assembly to have this overlap. It's going to create a bulge in the wall. Water will free drain behind this seam without any problem. And by overlapping the lath, that's going to help us avoid any telegraphing cracks. If we were just to butt our lath, we'd have a separation and we wouldn't have the continuity of the lath to help hold the stucco together. So when this is all fastened down and we apply our concrete, it's going to all the parts are going to work together and really make a strong assembly. We're really close to getting our stucco installed. The guys have one more piece of mesh and they're installing our control joints. The reason you install control joints, we install them below the window corners, and that minimizes cracking. It's an architectural detail and just overall the aesthetic of the assembly.
Yeah, with any masonry product, you really have to understand that cracking is essentially inevitable.
Yeah.
And there are code issues, especially with concrete. You can only do so many square feet without a joint. I don't know, to be honest, the stucco code for that, but I do know that architecturally we want this profile occurring anyway. Because as you can see, if the two sections of stucco on either side of the joint were to both shrink because of moisture content or temperature change, this W shape actually allows for an expansion and a compression without cracking the material. So it's different from our JB. This termination just fills up. It doesn't really do any expanding or contracting. But this, that allows for that movement, and you're basically telling the stucco, this is where you're gonna crack. You can move this way, you can move that way, this is your separation point. And it becomes, like Joe said, an architectural feature.
Yeah, and control joint. We are controlling the cracks.
That's what we're all about, man. Control layers, control joints. It's all about control. So we're really thrilled with the crew's work today. They've really hit it hard. We've got a super efficient crew working. This guy's been running mix, runs the wheelbarrow back, shovels it right onto the hawk for this gentleman who's running the trowel, loading the buckets for the guys on the second story of the scaffold. They're working just as fast. And then when he's got an empty wheelbarrow and it's running back up front, these guys pull out the Derby and they're flattening the whole thing out. And that's why it looks so good so fast. Really a very efficient crew. We're super pleased.
Yeah. We're the ones holding them down, holding them up.
That's
right. So you can even see on the left side of the wall where they started, it's smoother. And now they're in the process of just getting it up there. They'll smooth it with the hand trowel and then they'll eventually flatten it out some more. After it's all up, we'll scratch it and then we'll put on the Drive It system so we get our latex top coat. Yep. And yeah, we'll be in business.
Yeah, the elastomeric property of that Drive It is kind of, I don't want to say world renowned, but it's certainly well known. You're basically getting an expansive property that can shrink and grow with moisture content and temperature, and so that's why the synthetic stucco is favored. This is still a hard first coat for the base to build it out over the lath. We should probably talk about, traditionally you would see Drive It in an EIFS system, exterior insulating finish system. That's what EIFS stands for. And that for a long time was a typical process whereby you'd have like a 2-inch EPS foam, that's expanded polystyrene. You would go ahead and apply the foam, just as we've done our comfort board. That foam would get screwed and washered onto the surface of the house over the sheathing. Well,
sometime.
Yeah, Originally, it was not oversheathing, and that resulted in a lot of problems. But if they installed it over sheathing, then the first step would be to take a rasp and rough up that plasticky surface of the expanded polystyrene, which results in a bunch of tiny white styrofoam pellets snowing over the neighborhood. You'll notice we did not have that with our comfort board install. One of the reasons that Rockwell is excited about that new detail where you can go comfort board and then lath right over it is that you don't have that mess in your neighborhood.
And you get the thermal benefits of Rockwell,
which are superior. So I think that this is something that we're really proud of and can work on your job site as well.